Welcome to the Cult is King podcast. I'm your host, Rambling Bones, joined as ever by my co-host, the Duke.
Hello.
And it was my turn to pick the film.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately for Duke. And I picked probably the greatest movie ever made by a YouTuber, Kickassia.
It's a very, very low bar, but, he might have hurdled it. I can't think of very many other good YouTube movies.
Exactly. So this is the best one. But first, let me just bounce right into the plot before I explain even what this movie is. Our main character is, or at least the leader of our very large cast of characters, is internet movie reviewer Nostalgia Critic. And he has decided that he would like to invade the micronation of Molossia.
By the way, there's no rising action to this or prelude. He just goes up to the guy's house and I'm the Nostalgia Critic and I'm going to take over your micronation.
Yeah, it's really good about jumping right into the plot.
This is the movie for you if you hate exposition.
So, Nostalgia Critic decides he'd like to take Molossia, but of course the owner of this micronation, which sits in the middle of Nevada, the guy has a gun, so the critic has to run away. And so he gets all of his fellow internet reviewers who are a part of this collective, you could say, called Channel Awesome. So
at that time, that guy with the glasses.
So he gets all of his fellow reviewers who are under this umbrella of that guy with the glasses together, and they invade this micronation and take it over and redub it Kickassia. And from there, you have the power struggle of the Nostalgia Critic sitting himself atop the totem pole and everything going to crap.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. And that's the movie.
Yeah. So you want to give some people some background as to what this is and why it exists?
Well, before we get into that, Duke, initial thought.
It was definitely I was going to say it was definitely a movie, but I'm not sure it was. It felt like a 90-minute YouTube sketch.
I was just going to say, I think between the two of us, I had a really good time, and you slowly had a better time as things went on.
Yeah, I won't lie. There were some parts that did get me to chuckle. There were a few big laughs, too, but there was also a lot of... there's just...
To give you an idea, I think within the first 10 minutes, Duke turns to me and says, "This is embarrassing."
That might have been a little harsh, but honestly, look, this is 2010 YouTube distilled into one movie, and there's some good things there, and some things, that I'm quote-unquote, nostalgic for. But it also comes with all the bad things.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment.
So just to give you an idea of what this is, this was made in 2010. So in the early days of YouTube, one of the key pieces of content was the review channel. Still a big thing now, but it was there were several just huge review channels at the time, and one of the biggest of all time of classic YouTube was the Nostalgia Critic.
Well, and it's not just any review channel. It's review channels with character or characters.
Yes.
If you know the Angry Video Game Nerd, which I'm sure that's not exactly a obscure name to anybody. It's sort of in that vein.
Right, that's probably the person most responsible for kicking all this off, but the other really big one was the Nostalgia Critic, and at one point he kind of had his own website
company,
and then eventually I think everybody merged into a channel, that guy with the glasses, which would later become Channel Awesome.
It's sort of funny, just a brief aside, back in the day when YouTube was not the all-devouring website it is, that creators would get together and make their own websites and host content there as well as YouTube. So you have Normal Boots, Channel Awesome, I guess Cinemassacre was just the Angry Video Game Nerd, but it had a variety of content.
Right. No, nowadays, if you want any viewer to click off a site that's not YouTube or Google, you have to pull their teeth.
Yeah.
But so this was basically the first time, and they would do this a few times, that Channel Awesome would make its own movie. This was done as the 2-year anniversary for That Guy with the Glasses. So Doug did most of the writing. I think he helped direct, starred in it, and then they brought in like every other channel that was tied to That Guy with the Glasses, which gives us a cast of probably about 30 other YouTubers, other reviewers.
Yeah. No, it's kind of interesting. I guess we don't really have crossovers now because nobody's really playing a character on the internet anymore. Or, I mean, I guess if they are, it's less, I'm Doug Walker, but on camera, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. And sometimes you see me as normal, and sometimes you see me as the character. Now it's pretty much, if you see the person as the character, they're just the character 24/7. But
they're really, usually just doing it to Call of Duty footage.
Yeah, they're just. But at this time period, it's a novel concept to have these channels and these characters cross over. Even before this, we mentioned the Angry Video Game Nerd. The Nostalgia Critic and the Angry Video Game Nerd crossed over previously, and that was like a big deal. So having all of these sort of connected channels come together in one big movie was very cool at the time.
I mean, even now, there really haven't been very many crossovers of the magnitude. That's not even counting the cameos.
Now, real quickly, Duke, I know when I first said that I was picking Kickassia, you were a little pained. I think you're a little pained even still. But this is a cult movie.
Go ahead and make your case.
Cult movies are not about the quality. In fact, especially not about the quality.
Oh, that I definitely agree with you about.
It's also not about the medium. I don't know what the dictionary definition of a cult movie is, but the general understanding for me is that these are the movies that do not have, or at least didn't have, mainstream appeal and have a dedicated audience that grow the dedicated audience by sharing it with their friends. And that is exactly what this movie is. Every review I've seen of this movie always includes the fact that, oh, I watched this with my friends, or I love to show this to my friends. None of them think it's good. Okay, it's not the part, that's important. But they like to watch it, and they like to share it with people, okay? And for me, that's what this movie is a movie that I want to force people to watch. And maybe one day they'll learn to love it.
I guess I believe it's cult, but is it a movie?
See, that, I would agree that...
does a YouTube sketch after it is more than an hour, does it become a movie?
Now we're getting into, semantics.
What does it mean to be a movie? Now, fair enough. I guess I can see the argument that it's a cult movie. I don't know if I'll ever completely understand it, why you felt the need to make me watch it, but yeah, I've seen Kickassia now.
And this movie is probably less obscure to people who have been on the internet, or, if you're a terminally online person, you definitely know who...
Like Bones.
Like Bones. You definitely know what Channel Awesome is and Nostalgia Critic. But, if you're too old or too young and weren't an active YouTube user in the 2010s, that sort of era, this is more cult to you than it may be for others.
Well, and nowadays some of the curiosity is probably more morbid curiosity now that Channel Awesome has imploded.
Yeah.
It's really interesting too. We'll go into some of who's in it, but if you watch some of them then and some of them now, there were a few glow-ups, but there were a lot of blow-ups.
Everyone in this movie, maybe not everyone, 95% of everyone in this movie is in a different place in their life now.
Except for Doug.
Except for Doug Walker. he will never ever be able to not be the Nostalgia Critic.
Though I think he's finally accepted that. And to be honest, the Nostalgia Critic channel is still one that's pretty big now these days. Still, back in the day, it was like unescapable. There are just a few channels that you're going to hear people talk about, like Game Grumps, Angry Video Game Nerd, Nostalgia Critic was everywhere.
Now, I mentioned that the plot is that Nostalgia Critic would like to take over a micronation in Nevada.
It is in Nevada, yeah.
Now, there is a very special man who has declared his 11 acres of property to be an independent nation called Molossia.
I know at the time I checked, I think there's still a website for it.
Yes, molossia.org. In fact, there's even a page on the website dedicated to the invasion of Molossia by
Kickassia.
by.
That's what the Nostalgia Critic. What's what they named their nation.
Yes, this micronation, of course, is not recognized by literally anybody
except a bunch of tourists.
Except
it is a tourist attraction, I hear.
It is a tourist attraction. I guarantee you that now when people go there, they go there because they saw this movie.
I mean, it's a possibility, but the owner of this micronation does play himself in the movie. His name is Kevin Baugh, and he's about as good an actor as most of the reviewers.
Yeah, they filmed on his property and in his house when they weren't filming inside of a hotel room.
For that one scene that happens where there's like 30 of them in the room and they just keep going back to the room.
But you get to see the inside of Kevin Baugh's house and his weird Annie collection. There's just a shot where he's got like a hutch or some sort of cabinet, and it's full of Annie memorabilia, like the musical. And it's kind of distracting. Duke, did you notice the Annie?
No.
Yeah, I
guess
noticed.
It was distracting to you. Granted, I might have just been still just, soaking it in that I'm watching a Nostalgia Critic movie.
Yeah. But going back to impressions of the film, definitely a slow start to the movie. It becomes more of a movie the longer it goes on. And I think, Duke, as the movie went on, you seem to be enjoying yourself more at the end than at the beginning.
Yeah, it definitely takes a little bit to find its feet, but that also might have been that it killed enough brain cells watching the first half, but by the second half I was just a dumber person. Look, if you're an adult, this one I think is best enjoyed with a couple beers and a friend.
The way the movie starts, and part of the reason I say as it goes on it becomes more of a movie, is the very, very beginning is actually just like ripped straight out of Looney Tunes, where Marvin the Martian comes to just take over Earth, except it's the Nostalgia Critic just knocking on the door of Molossia saying he's just going to take over now.
Right, there's no reason for him to do it. There's no build up to that. No, it's just the whole premise is exactly that. I'm the Nostalgia Critic and I want to run Molossia.
But after the first 5 minutes, it's then the critic gathering his troops, and you can tell that it's pretty much everyone filming how they would film when they do a review, and then submitting that footage to Doug to edit into the movie.
And he calls like every one of them up. And the cast is ginormo.
But as the movie goes on and they leave, people stop filming in their apartments and start actually going to the locations. Things pick up. Mind you, this is, I think this goes without saying, but this is major amateur hour when it comes to filmmaking.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. One of the things though I'm not always as sharp as Bones is when it comes to some of the cinema things, the first thing I thought is not a single one of these shots is centered.
Everything is shot at a Dutch angle.
Everything.
And either like the camera's below them looking up, or well, it's typically below them looking up. So my guess would be that if they are using a tripod in those scenes, they're using like a dinky, like maybe $30 tripod that doesn't extend high enough to be level with everybody. It could have been a creative choice. However,
Not a creative choice I would have made.
it's not, it doesn't communicate what that shot would typically communicate.
Right. So that was like one of the first things I noticed. The other thing that you're all going to notice is that despite being in front of cameras all of the time, there are not a lot of people who can act in this movie.
It's bizarre. It feels like everybody should. I mean, I guess I've never watched 90% of these reviewers' content, so maybe their content is always not very charismatic, but there's maybe 5 people who can act, and it's not even that they can act, they can just be their character.
Right, and that's all anybody has to be in this film is just their reviewer character. Nobody's playing a different role. I mean, heck, even Kevin Baugh is playing himself. But as far as people who can act, the Nostalgia Critic plays the Nostalgia Critic quite well, and he really is, as much as I'm sure that he might have made this movie to be the star of it, he really ought to be the star of it because he's the most engaging.
He's also, when it's your company and you are unironically the biggest face of the company, it sort of makes sense that you would be the main character.
Right. But no, he's probably the best actor. I thought Cinema Snob did a better job than the majority of them. Lindsay Ellis was okay, but she was doing a bad Sarah Palin impression the whole time, which was dated a little bit even at the time.
I mean, it was 2010, so 2 years since the '08 election and Sarah Palin. So it's not completely out of the consciousness, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, this is just a hair. Like, who is this for? Who is this joke for?
So I went back and I watched a Nostalgia Critic video where he actually reviews Kickassia, and makes fun a little bit of his own movie that he made. And people were putting in the comments how dated that was. And this video was made like a few years ago. So it's just getting more dated. It's just very bizarre.
It is very bizarre. And I almost wonder if it's solely because of the Saturday Night Live Sarah Palin sketches were so successful that they're like, I saw this on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
Let's just put it in the movie.
And it did kind of make sense for Lindsay Ellis because after this she would go on to make political content until she kind of fell off.
She probably hates Sarah Palin, though.
She probably does. Probably a little too much.
But apart from those 3, Angry Joe is very good at being Angry Joe, and
Kevin Baugh just has to look steely, into the camera most of the time, and he does that well enough.
Yeah.
Were there any that you thought were especially bad? I mean, other than like 80% of them?
Yeah, some of them are they don't have much to work with even to begin with, but I think one person who has the most lines of the bad actors is Phalis. Every time he talks, I just see the switch in his head click where it's, I'm acting now. It's time to act. This is what a natural actor would do. And
it sounds like he's acting. It doesn't sound like he's whatever he's acting as. It sounds like he's acting.
Yes, it's rough.
I also thought Mars Girl was pretty bad.
But Mars Girl isn't really in the movie that much.
She's not like in the top 5, but she gets more than a lot of the rank and file who are, like a minute or 2 of screen time. And a lot of them are in there for like one joke.
Yeah, so this movie is definitely an ensemble film, but it's not maybe handled as well as a good ensemble film.
Well, the problem is the way you make a good ensemble film is at odds with what this film is. Because this film is like, we're going to take all of Channel Awesome, or I guess at that time, that guy with the glasses, and put it into one movie. Which means that you have way too big of an ensemble in this. And even though it probably focuses, on kind of a core, the thing is it's still trying to spread itself out somewhat, and it's spread too thin.
There are definitely other reviewers or I'm a little ignorant here because I was not watching at the time. I'm assuming that these are all reviewers who are a part of the, that guy with the glasses company, but weren't able to be in the movie, who pretty much recorded like a 5-second cameo of themselves, and that got featured in the film.
Like the fabled Santa Christ scene.
Yeah, so for more detail, there's a part where the character of Santa Christ arrives. And Santa Christ he's like a reoccurring gag, or at least a one-off gag on a Nostalgia Critic review. So he shows up, spoiler alert, gets immediately gunned down, and they decide that through the power of belief, they will resurrect him. So everybody, including the people in the audience, all need to shout, "We believe in Santa Christ."
And then it goes through all of these cameos. And while it could have been a funny way to squeeze them in, here's the problem with every joke in this movie, or a good number of them. A lot of them could have been funny if they had ended a minute or two earlier.
Every time there's a long joke, the joke always lasts too long. And the punchline to the Santa Christ thing is funny, but it would have been funnier if there hadn't been 500 frickin' cameos. And even worse, some of those cameos are just Doug Walker playing another character who shows up in his reviews as like a joke. He has a review on the Lost in Space movie, and he dresses up as, was it, Dr. Smith? And for some reason, him doing Dr. Smith shows up, I think, at least twice in this movie. And I know we said that, it makes sense that Doug is the main character of the film.
But we don't need Doug cameos when he is the main character of the film.
Yeah, we don't need, you're already in the film. We don't need the other characters you put in sketches to keep showing up.
But, this one, the calling bit at the beginning, the one where they're going around interviewing people, it's too much. A lot of these needed trimming.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the problem you run into is if you were watching at the time and you had a favorite reviewer, you probably wanted to see them in this movie. But man, there are just too many. I mean, some of the characters, there was a reviewer who did video games literally called Jew Wario. He dresses like Wario, if you haven't figured it out.
We're pretty sure he's Jewish.
His whole gimmick in this movie, all he can do is just, every time somebody says a terrible idea, he says, "Oh, I like that."
It's a running gag that never really landed to begin with.
And then there's one by the Angry Video Game Nerd, except that he's not playing the Angry Video Game Nerd, he's doing his other persona, Board James, where he literally explains to everybody how to play Risk. And he goes through, which, I mean, I guess unironically, if you wanted to learn to play Risk, you could learn it from this video, but it's too much.
I think part of the problem is, this is the first time they made a movie. And despite all of them being movie reviewers, I think they have a better concept of video making for YouTube than they do of actually making a movie. They're used to sitting in front of a camera on a couch and talking and inserting movie clips into the video. They've never actually had to write a script that is coherent. So, and another way that comes out in this movie is it's in parts. You can watch it all together, but they've got it segmented. And I think this movie released in parts. It might have released all together. I don't really know. I was not watching at the time. But each part is, for the most part, centered on one thing. And so, we mentioned, there's a reporter who goes around. So directly after they take Molossia, it's one of those war propaganda, the news around the world type things. Except it's a reporter reviewing all these different people and their jobs. And that's a whole part of the movie that gets its own chunk. And it's just a sketch. And it doesn't really need to be as long as it is.
Yeah, and
As we've said,
and there's some funny parts there, but they'd be so much funnier if it ended before it overstayed its welcome.
yeah.
Now, the thing about this is it's still very much even. I know you say as it goes, it feels more like a movie, but for me, the whole thing feels like a YouTube sketch, and I feel like if you chopped it up and put it on YouTube, it would look like par for the course for 2010. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Granted, these sketches would probably have been popular at that time. Part of your mileage with this movie, that will be like how you take this movie will, I guess, depend on whether you experienced old YouTube and how you feel about old YouTube, or whether or not you know who the Nostalgia Critic is and whether or not that alone is funny to you. Which, for the record, there's something about Doug that's funny to me. So
And then I'm not gonna lie here. I love the Nostalgia Critic, and I don't know why I find him funny, because so much of his stuff, so much of his content is really lame, but there's something humorous about him.
I find the concept of Doug funny, but not necessarily like in a mean-spirited way. Like, I don't dislike him at all. It's just like, this is just something. I don't know.
I think for me it's almost one of those irony loops where I started watching him and I actually liked him. Then as time went on, I didn't really enjoy watching his content. Then it became a meme to watch his content. Then it's like, I'm watching it because it's funny. The act of watching it is funny. And now it's, I actually unironically find this funny. It's a weird thing, but that's part of the reason I picked this movie is I kind of wanted to just watch a bad Nostalgia Critic sketch go on for an hour and a half.
And while I might have groaned more than I laughed, I did laugh. I think the funniest thing to me is that once they take over Molossia, all Doug wants to do is sit around in his M. Bison costume, which he wears for most of the movie, watching Hogan's Heroes.
Well, on the M. Bison outfit, it's got like the cap. There's a little metal emblem on it, but he's got a little picture of his own face cut out and sat on top of the emblem. But yeah, all Doug wants to do is sit and watch literally just daytime television reruns.
Right, he's just watching Hogan's Heroes and Gilligan's Island, which is probably what I'd do if I owned my own nation anyhow. Now, I don't know tons about the making of this movie. A lot of it's hearsay. Generally, this is regarded as like when people in Channel Awesome were still getting along, there would be more films, and the relationships between them would degenerate as they went on. But apparently Doug did like throw a hissy fit, I heard. I guess he was tussling at one point with like, I think it was Linkara, and there was like a little rip or something in his M. Bison outfit, and he freaked out, which is funny to me.
And that's a cinema quality outfit, okay? You can't be ripping the M. Bison outfit. What I think's even funnier about the M. Bison costume is I believe it's supposed to be the costume from the Street Fighter movie. It's not a video game accurate M. Bison. It's a movie accurate M. Bison outfit. But yeah, most of the stuff I've heard about the behind the scenes is not only was it amateur hour when it came to making the movie, all of the behind the scenes producing things like making sure people have water and aren't dying of heat stroke and let's not grievously injure ourselves. Stuff like that didn't really get taken care of, but people were more okay with that happening because this was everyone's first time making a movie. This was a big deal, and like Duke said, the controversy and drama had not sprung. Now, by the time you get to their later movies, like To Boldly Flee, that's where I think the really, really bad behind-the-scenes chaos happened.
And if you want to know more about all of the craziness, we don't have time to even begin to get into it. I think there's a lot of channels that have covered it better. I think Procrastitera is a channel that has a good video about the fall of Channel Awesome. But
Yeah.
let's just say, but things would later go crazy. And lots of people who are in the movie now are no longer prominent or welcome in certain,
Circles.
Though Doug for the most part has survived and is pretty much where he is. It's funny though, because Doug just strikes me as kind of like a golden retriever of a person. He's
Mm-hmm.
just always like positive, but also completely clueless.
I would say that seems very accurate. He's somebody who probably shouldn't be in a leadership position of a company or of a movie. He should just be the nostalgia critic. And you know what? I'd like to highlight this because it's once you see it, it's very hard to not see. But this movie's a little meta in that in Doug Walker's real life, he's been trying to escape being the nostalgia critic forever. Every time he tries to do something else, it typically is a failure and crashes and burns, and he's back to being the nostalgia critic. And in this movie, he he decides that he would like to take over a nation and become a dictator and no longer review movies. He literally in one part when they take over, they're like, "What do we do now?" And, we were going to review movies. Like, no, no more reviews. We're done with that. I'm gonna, we're we run a country now, and of course, it all falls apart, and he has to go back to being a reviewer. One of the funnier scenes, because it's so off the wall. There's I believe he's Indian. I'm not even gonna try to say his name because I can't even properly remember what it is. But one of the people who are attached to his company appear to him in a dream
As one of the kids from Captain Planet.
as Mati from Captain Planet.
I don't know why that got me pretty good.
It was really, yeah, it was pretty great. But the whole dream sequence is, Doug, you've forgotten who you are. You gotta go review movies again. I don't know, Duke. Is this schizo rambling? Does this make sense?
No, it sounds about right. If only he'd learned this lesson when he made this movie.
Yeah.
I think these days he's kind of happy to be the nostalgia critic. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with being the nostalgia critic. It was good enough that I think he recently had a cameo on Smiling Friends. So,
Yeah.
we like Smiling Friends.
Well, I guess now we can. I say we could talk about cast and crew, but this is apologies. We've probably name dropped a bunch of names that, unless this is the world you have been living in for a while, if you're just some like normal person who was not young on YouTube. I mean, I guess.
Oh, I'm about to say, though, even me, like, I used YouTube in the early days, or at least during its, like, maybe not the real early days, but, like, its golden years, and I didn't know who half these people were either.
There's a lot of names, and it's very reasonable for a normal person to not know any of the names we have mentioned. And the cast and crew is large, but they really haven't done much of anything.
Well, and other than Doug's brother Rob, they're all pretty much YouTubers.
Rob Walker and Doug Walker wrote and directed this. Rob is in it as Santa Christ. Doug is in it as Nostalgia Critic.
And 50 other characters.
And 50 other characters. We mentioned Lindsay Ellis, who I think her review character was the Nostalgia Chick.
Yep.
You had Lewis Lovehog, which is a glorious name. That
right.
is a name.
But better known as Linkara or the Lightbringer.
Yeah, Linkara, I think, reviewed TV shows like Power Rangers.
I think comics also is his big
yeah,
thing.
yeah, and comic book.
His show's still going, but I don't know how well it does. Atop the Fourth Wall, which also got a movie.
Hey, I know what we're doing next.
Not what we're doing next, but we probably will do that.
There was the Cinema Snob, and he's, I mean, it's in his name. His characters, he pretentiously reviews movies. Spoonie is another big name.
Yeah, Noah Antweiler.
What is he, like video game reviews?
He did a lot of video game reviews, wrestling. He had a side character who he plays in this movie too, called Captain Insano, that he turns into.
I think it's Dr. Insane.
Dr. Insano. I'm sorry, Captain Insano is from The Water Boy.
Yes.
But yeah, and you want to talk about a guy too who's fallen off in a big way.
Yeah, things have not gone great for the Spoony one, but he's someone who in this movie is not always the best actor, but he's just strange, so he's entertaining enough as is. And I will say I really enjoyed him and the critic have a brawl, and there's lightning involved and other shenanigans, and I don't know, it's one of the better parts of the movie, I thought.
I thought that was funny too. I enjoyed that. Angry Joe has a somewhat, he's not like one of the big players in this, but he gets plenty of screen time compared to a lot of the others, and I think he's still doing just fine.
Yeah, he's video game reviewer. His part is just mostly him holding guns and being loud, but in a endearing way.
Right, but there are so many more.
I guess the only other person who I sort of would like to mention is Film Brain. He plays an important role in the film as
Doug's number one lackey.
And here, one criticism that the movie has gotten, apart from it just not being a very good movie, is it seems like everybody is written to be more like the critic character. I don't really see that for most of the characters. However, Film Brain
he's definitely written with Doug's comedic stylings in mind.
Yeah, his reviews are not. He's just like a normal British person.
Yeah, whereas here he's like a sped up childlike spaz type character
who, yeah, definitely childlike, and he only turns on Doug after Doug killed Santa Christ. So that's, I think, probably the most important characters. There's, again, a lot of other characters. There's Handsome Tom, and his role is mostly giving people piggyback rides. I've never even heard of him until this movie.
No, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know Jew Wario. I
There,
never
8-Bit Mickey.
8-Bit Mickey, Mars Girl was in it.
I have no.
I didn't know who. I had to look up that was who it is. She's notable as being the one of two women in this movie. I guess not counting Kevin Baugh's family, who just kind of sits on the couch.
I guess there is in cameo sections,
right?
But women who are actually able to show up and be filmed, she is one of two.
I think Larry Bundy Jr. is in here.
I don't. What was his gimmick?
Oh, he's still around. I forget what the name of his channel is, but he does like gaming type videos.
That's I think, as a brief aside, you have all of these reviewers tied to the same, company, but there's not a lot of room for different. You can probably count the types of media you can review on one or maybe both hands, and when you have 100 reviewers tied to your company, it's like, yes, here's our 20 different video game reviewers. They all review the same video games.
Oh, it's crazy too that you would go to this site just to watch reviews of things.
Yeah.
Like, every one of these YouTubers was the same type of YouTuber.
One guy...
Some of them have, like, diversified since who are still around and doing well, but yeah.
One guy who I don't know the character's name. They probably said it one time, but a character in this movie who is just a PNG, like he's literally just a PNG, but at one point he becomes 3D. He's pretty much hulks up or goes Super Saiyan, and that just turns him from a PNG to actually being in the movie. I'm gonna guess his gimmick was that's how he reviewed stuff, was just as one of those PNG tubers.
Except that it's a photo of him, which is different.
Instead of an anthropomorphic fox.
Thank goodness.
It written in or drawn in different poses, thinking.
But I mean, I know we're still missing some, but I think that gives about as good a rundown of cast as you can get.
Yeah, pretty much everyone we mentioned will show up again. At least I think. I don't know who doesn't show up, but there's more Channel Awesome movies, and these faces are recurring in those.
The advantage this one has is that it's 90 minutes long.
Yes, I think To Boldly Flee is 3 hours, 2.5.
Too long?
Too long, yeah. Suburban Nights might be 90 minutes to 2 hours.
I think it's 2 hours long because I think I got curious after this.
Yeah, and those were also all released in parts. So, again, if this movie was released in chunks like I think it was, first miniseries that we've covered. How's that feel?
It's not the first miniseries that we covered.
What was the first miniseries we covered?
House of Frankenstein, our second review.
You're right. Second miniseries. I guess that's probably best that we covered.
Hey, this is our first YouTuber movie, and the fact that it is a YouTuber movie made it ahead of its time in some ways. And thankfully, this was a YouTuber movie that didn't actually get released to the silver screen because, man, you know what? I've been crapping on this movie a little bit, or maybe not so much on this podcast. I complained a lot about it to Bones as we were watching it, but it's probably one of the better YouTuber movies.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you, is where's the stand up in comparison to movies like the Fred movie or the Angry Video Game Nerd movie?
I have not seen the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, but I tell you what, I'd watch this any day if it meant I never had to watch the Fred movie again. No, you're not allowed to pick that as your next film. I'm putting my foot down.
There was like a Logan Paul airplane movie. There's something,
and there's like a Shane Dawson horror movie.
Oh yeah.
So when you consider all of these things, suddenly Kickassia looks like a pretty good movie.
I think this movie's advantage is the fact that it's actually made by the people who, put out the videos. So they stay true to their content, and although the film quality is not great and the story is not great, it's different than when some studios like, these kids, they love the Fred. He forgets his meds and he spazzes. Let's get some writers to
somebody call John Cena.
Someone call John Cena. He's got to be in this movie. Let's get the writers' room together and pump out a 90-minute film that is related.
Oh yeah, and honestly, it was smart too the way that they, problem with the Angry Video Game Nerd movie I heard is, despite the fact that, I didn't do very well and it was a YouTube movie, it had tons of money behind it. Whereas, this, I think Doug used After Effects for most of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that worked in this movie's favor, at least, is they didn't try to, go for something way far outside of their wheelhouse. Yeah, they never did a movie before, but at least they did the kind of comedy that they were known for. So if you were watching them at this time, you probably enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's YouTube sketches thrown together, and just like how their actual YouTube sketches are, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're not. That's pretty much how the movie is. Duke, I don't think I have much else to say about this movie.
I'm out.
Yeah, it's a really hard recommend.
If
when I say
like...
hard recommend, I don't mean it's you have to see this. It's I'm not sure if I can recommend it to people.
Look, if you're nostalgic for 2010 YouTube, if you like the Nostalgia Critic, or if you find the idea of the Nostalgia Critic funny, you should go watch it. If you don't know who any of those people are, or you find the Nostalgia Critic incredibly annoying, you should leave it alone.
Yeah. Now, I think if you don't know who any of these people are, and you're older than 30, you shouldn't watch this movie.
I'm very close to aging out of being allowed to watch it.
Now, however, if you do know who these people are, and you are older than 30, then you can. and also younger than 30. It's very complicated. There's a
It's
chart
very easy
here.
to be too old for this movie, yet so easy to be too young for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard if you know who the people are and you sort of like this.
It does have Linkara in it though.
If you watch Oni Plays,
If you know what, if you watch Oni Plays
and you know the
you-
jokes,
you'll like this movie.
or maybe you won't because you've only experienced these things through proxy and you just you weren't cut out for the real thing. Yeah.
I want to go watch some Oni Plays. In the meantime, we should probably start gearing towards the next movie.
Yeah, Duke. What old non-YouTube movie are we gonna watch?
Well, I was kind of torn, but I think we're going to watch Duel.
That is a little more normal for us, I think.
If there is a normal for us, we bounce around, but
yeah, spice it up.
Duel is classically a cult classic, if that makes any sense. And it has been requested, so we're finally getting to it.
Yeah, I want to reiterate. It's not about where the film was put out or the quality of the film. However, low quality films do tend to have more of a cult than high quality films.
Well, it's like I've always told people. I'm a person who loves movies. I love a good movie. But the only thing I love better than a good movie is a terrible movie.
And that's why you looked like you wanted to shoot yourself while we watched Kickassia.
Oh, that's because I didn't get to watch a movie. I got to watch YouTube for an hour and a half.
Well, fortunately, we'll be watching an actual movie next time, and you can hear it next time.
Whenever that is.
Whenever that is. As for us, that's it.
Yep, so you know what you should do? You should go down into the comments and tell us who your favorite 2010 era YouTuber is.
Yeah, sure. You could do that.
Anyway, so long and keep it cold.